Walker was hit with one of the pretty bad storms in the first wave of the day. I believe it was 4 to 5 a.m. time frame when we received our first big, large tornado. It was at EF3.
We got woke up early that morning. Cars had been overturned. And as the day unfolded, the morning unfolded, we realized we actually got hit by either straight line winds or a tornado. We had known that it was supposed to be an all-day thing of supercell tornadoes. And of course, I do the air quotes because, we all kind of played it off. Yeah. We never get hit in Cordova with anything bad, and really hadn't until they built the interstate. That's a story in itself. But for years, there was never tornadoes here. We always helped everybody else. And that day, we had to have everybody else help us.
A tornado emergency for Walker County, specifically around Dora, Sumiton, and Cordova, Sipsey, and Empire. If you're listening to us, and Brian Peters, are you still on the line with us?
James, we're trying to get back where we can get a view. The hills and trees to our north have obscured it. It is definitely now on the north side of I-22. It crossed somewhere very close to the exit 72 on the future I-22, US 78. We've now got to go to the next exit to try to...
On the week leading up to April 27th, 2011, the Weather Service had been advising us all week that this would be a system coming at us like a generational type system, that we were going to have a bad day. It was going to be multiple waves. We were going to see the violent long track tornadoes, and they were pretty much spot on. We were prepared to deal with something like we weren't used to, even though we were used to tornadoes in Walker County. We were preparing to see something that we weren't accustomed to seeing. Walker was hit with one of the pretty bad storms in the first wave of the day. I believe it was 4 to 5 a.m. time frame when we received our first big, large tornado. It was at EF3. It hit Aldridge.
Some of the buildings downtown were damaged, but we didn't realize that. We got to our station, couldn't get anything out. We were fortunate enough to get a couple of vehicles out till we could respond to them.
I actually had to squeeze them out and started noticing big stuff missing, as far as trees down and everything else.
The morning of when the first come over, I got a call that damage is done, damages at City Hall, which our Cordova Masonic Lodge was upstairs. And I had a key and was a past master, and the decisions had to be made to move stuff. And it just come up that I made the decision, we got to move it now, and thank goodness we did.
We had a lot of injuries and a lot of damages that morning, and we knew we had a second round coming in. Unfortunately, with the first storm systems that we had that early in the day, we lost power to a lot of the parts of our county, which made it impossible for us to continue to be able to warn throughout the day because our warning systems were down. The second part of the day, we knew we had responders out in the field. We had families that were already dealing with damages and total loss of their homes. And when the second tornado started arriving in the area, we literally had no way to warn anybody citizen-wise. We were using 911 to notify first responders. We were calling cell phones. Cordova police were out with their sirens on their patrol cars. It's a very sick feeling when your primary job is to keep people safe and to warn them, and you have absolutely no way to do it.
We probably cut trees all the way up to maybe 30 minutes to an hour before the second one hit. Someone had brought in food. One of the restaurants in Jasper had donated some barbecue.
That's what it was.
Unfortunately, we still had power at our facility, and we were able to watch the storms coming out of Tuscaloosa and our county. And I tell you, the whole place was quiet. It was full, but it was quiet, and everybody was just sitting there. It was just one of those days where you felt there was nothing but misery that day. You felt for the people who you just saw this tornado coming out of Tuscaloosa, and you knew it was coming for your people, and it's just a sick feeling.
Mr. Bug Reed, Jess Reed, I went by to check on him, and he was worried about his place down on by Indian Creek Youth Camp. And we rode down there, and I can't remember exactly. We turn off Pleasantfield Road, but there's a real wide open place with pastures on the left. And there was a guy parked across the road, and we stopped, and I said, what are you looking at? And I turned and I said, "Bug, that looked just like a tornado went across through there." He said, "Surely not." And I said, "Nah, not."
We had set up a mobile command. So, we had a trailer back then. We had an RV that we set up at the police station. The police station was hit. So we were working off a generator that we supplied them to have power, and we hooked up our RV to it. So we were running all of our operations out of the RV because we didn't have a station at the time. So we had gotten a lot of us together, had finally stopped, decided to eat. Some of us had gotten a few bites, and one of our junior firemen, I guess, was outside. Said, "Hey," said, "There's tree limbs falling out here." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" Because there's no trees downtown. We saw leaves and some twigs, and then we saw one rather large branch laying in the middle of Commerce. Because we were right up against the tracks on Commerce Street. But we started noticing some clown activity over the big hilltop above the clinic and all that.
Get in here! Get in here! Look, they coming! They coming! Get in!
That's it!
Y'all get in! Look, Chocolate, I got. Holy y'all better come on! Got a damn tornado.
We ended up in the shelter, or in the basement of City Hall. We watched everything get blown up one side of the alley. We're holding this door, and this door's got big barn holes in this door, so how it held anything, which everything got calm, and then it was like seconds after that, everything got pulled back the other direction.
At that time, I lived out in Bordentown, which is just outside the city limits, closer to the interstate, and we were in our safe room in our basement. Well, I watched it out of my back door of my basement, and it sounded like the tornado sirens were going off. And actually, that was the actual tornado, and it was going through Argo at that time. And I could see it in the horizon. And so as soon as it got safe enough to where we could get out of the basement, I came to town and actually brought my saws and all that stuff because I knew it done hit the Cordova.
Man, you all right?
Come on!
You got to! The damn camera! Look at this! Holy
Okay, let's go!
look, look, God damn it, man!
Oh my God!
I can't believe it! The camper's gone! Hey, we have no camper! Holy we don't! You okay? Our camper's exploded! Hey, look at our damn top on our truck!
Nothing was the same. I mean, literally, we walked out and we couldn't see downtown as far as the main street. All we could see was towards the old grocery store and the old parking lot and the bank, and all of that was flat.
Yeah, all gone.
There was debris everywhere. I mean, there's debris that was there that shouldn't be there. There's no way there could be that much stuff there. But everything was leveled. There was windows busted out of cars. We had fire trucks with hoses unloaded. A fire truck that has turned almost sideways in the street. The RV that we talked about was on top of the police station.
The first emergency calls started coming out of Oatman. They were the first ones hit, and they were the first calls coming in, and they were the first death we had in the county that day was in their location. And 911 notified us that we had a fatality in the storm path down below Oatman. And unfortunately, we just kept getting those calls. They kept coming back to back about our fatalities and our damage reports and trees down and homes destroyed. And I believe it was nonstop for like 2-3 hours. A couple of us left we went down to Cordova to see what we could do immediately, because they were not only devastated in the first storm system, that they got it again in the same location with the second. The second storms eliminated what we had tried to set up for them, that morning. The second storms took out.
Of course, when I come in and then turned and went up in the Benchville area, and started immediately. It was devastating, and started immediately trying to clear the road as best we could. Didn't realize how bad it was, and others came along and started helping. And the next thing you knew, I stopped for a moment and walked down Green Avenue to where the Long Memorial was devastated. And when I was coming down Green Avenue, right before I got to Long Memorial, it was just heartbreaking to see downtown as tore up as it was. And, it was just, I wasn't the only one. It was several people standing there in awe of what the damage was.
It was just, we were in awe. A lot of us were speechless. We had not really seen that much at one time anywhere, and it was so fast. Brett got pulled away from us pretty quick. We didn't know where he went. Somebody grabbed him up and then just hauled him off. And it turned out we had people trapped in houses not too far from that. And the most I saw of Brett for the next hour and a half was I'd see him run through and he'd have more stuff. He'd run through and he'd have more stuff. And then he'd have a vehicle. He ended up commandeering a little Bobcat.
Yeah, I had a Bobcat.
And I'm like, what are you doing? He said, don't ask.
I ended up using that Bobcat a lot, just filling the bucket up, getting medical supplies, everything else, and just bringing it down, and I'd unload it. I'd run and get some more stuff.
And so we slowly start kind of walking through the debris, and then we see people just walking, stumbling. I mean, it wasn't Walking Dead-esque, but you had people that were, you could tell they were walking wounded. They were people that were here hurt. People were carrying people, and they were bringing them to us. Here's all these people that we just laid on the pavement of the grocery store parking lot. We've got several people. They just keep coming. We don't know where they're coming from. And we had an old pharmacy, and right beside their parking lot, we actually broke into the pharmacy, cleared out the main room, and that became our home for the next 6-8 months.
Several months.
I think we had close to 30 people that were transported. We had 80-something reported injuries. And then, of course, we found our 4 fatalities.
When I come in, I really didn't see anything until where the old laundromat was, and Jeff and Bonds and all of that there. And when I left with Mr. Reed, my mom was there, sister, niece, Aunt Lois, Jeff and Vaughn, and some other of my friends was there. And you hit that little bit of panic for a second, and then everybody started saying, "Larry, they're okay. Everybody there's okay." I guess, Boy Scouts, military, mine rescue, and love of my town kicked in. And one of the most significant things I remember was right down here in this parking lot, that chain link fence. There was 2 little boys laying there. And they wasn't my scouts, but they were my scouts' age. And I remember the lady being in this little ditch creek. And Jill Lively said, "Larry, what do we do?" I said, "Get her out." Somebody said, "No, you can't." I said, "Yeah, we can. That's somebody's mama." Well, I said, "Would you want your mama down there?" And I said, "No, get out."
It's really hard to watch videos of the storms that day that came through, because I don't see the tornado. I just remember the sights we saw, or the poor people and they were walking around so devastated. It was just so sad. We had a lady in Cordova that she walked up holding the only possession that she had, and it was some messed up pictures and a gourd from her garden or something. It's all she had left. Her vehicle was destroyed, and it's just the saddest sights. People, I know a lot of people rush to help, but in those first few moments when only responders are allowed on the scene, you see the absolute worst of the worst. In those days, they haunt you.
Well, for a couple of days, it was just chaotic. And when I'd go home, my house wasn't affected. Had power, everything there in Crestview. I'd go in, take a shower, and lay down, and all I could see was those 2 little boys. And I just like, Larry, there's still more to do. And I just get up and come back.
And I don't think we quit moving for 3 straight days.
Yeah, it was wide open.
We didn't even sleep for 3 straight days because we had so much going on. So many people that were still trapped in homes the next day, and even after that, they weren't necessarily hurt, but they couldn't necessarily get out either. That went on for at least 3 days before we actually could sit and decide, okay, what's next? And we didn't know what to do.
John Crumpet actually brought me a side-by-side and told me, he said, Larry, this is your use only, you do whatever. And I remember riding up to the Methodist Church parking lot and standing there, and in every direction you looked, there was devastation. And I still remember at that time is when I broke down. And I just cried. I cried for I don't know how long, because just like you said, my town was gone. My history was almost wiped out. Well, it was always pretty vibrant. There was quite a few people always in town. Majority of the time, especially Friday afternoons and Saturdays, both sides of the street was parked full. On the corner where the drugstore was Barnes Grocery. And I always remember my dad telling about when he went in, worked with Mr. Barnes, and he going to do a lot of work in the meat market. He told him, he said, now Aubrey, said right here is £1. He said, if it's over here, said, you're cheating the customer. He said, if it's over here, you're cheating me. He said, this is £1. My dad worked at Natco brick plant for years. And when it shut down, had to do something else. And Mr. Barnes was going out of business, and he bought the Barnes. It was Sides Grocery, and it seemed like a big store to me at that time. But now that everything's gone and you look at that footprint, it's not really that wide, it was just fairly long.
You're here for the pool hall?
I was. I spent lots of time in the pool hall. I learned a lot of things, some good, some bad. I never was a real good pool shooter. I enjoyed it. It was on Saturday mornings. They had what they call, it was the drawing. And different businesses put in, it wasn't much, a little bit of money. I think it might have been $50. But they would shut down the street coming in. It was just a T street then, but just an alley going straight. And it would be full of people waiting on usually the mayor. Rolled cage and drew out a winning ticket. And at that time, $50 make you a big grocery bill or whatever. Now, Cordova was a good town to grow up in.
I'd always wanted to be a part of whatever the next chapter of Cordova was, but the tornado just ignited it. It's like it had to happen. I got to be here now. I have to be here. And so I got on the council in July of 2011, and then, obviously ran for mayor in 2012, and then took office in November of 2012. The day I walked in, I was inheriting a main street with a fence around it. Because we were working with FEMA, and there was a lot of story there holding that up. We didn't have a grocery store. We had the fire trucks in a temporary place with their trucks outside and a little bit of an office. We had moved the police department at that time into the VFW, and then City Hall and Water and Gas were operating out of the Armory. So everything had a sense of temporary to it when you walked in day one.
There was a lot of red tape we had to deal with. We couldn't tear buildings down we didn't own, but yet you couldn't leave buildings standing that weren't safe. So everything downtown was in a fence. So what do you do with a fence end area and not let property owners enter their own property? Most of the buildings weren't insured, and if they were insured, it wasn't enough to cover them or the city. The city had insurance on most of their buildings, but still, it never was truly enough. We'd already lost all of probably 80% of our city infrastructure as far as city assets. And then the whole downtown district is not usable. You have to drive around it. We kept pushing several directions trying to get it tore down. So then we had 3 fires. One from trying to clean up debris. So all the buildings had tarps on them. Tarps burned with embers very well. Yeah. So at one point in time, the city actually had 2 aerial fire trucks in the air fighting fires for the whole downtown district.
We're a year and a half later, and we're having to drive around our main street. We can't even drive on it. It has a padlock on either end, and the buildings are still in the state of disrepair that they were on April 27th of 2011, and even worse because we were a couple of fires in by then, right? The biggest part of all that is the giant bureaucratic organization that FEMA is and was. But think about some person in Washington that's assigned the case of Cordova and paying for the demolition of some buildings downtown. You don't know what that really is. You don't know that there's padlocks on either end of Main Street, and literally every building in downtown is gone, and we need to get them down so we can start fresh, right? You don't know that. It's just paperwork, and it's, we got to jump through this hoop, this hoop, this hoop. They kept moving the carrot. And so we had a fantastic recovery team on the ground, supported through the Walker Area Community Foundation, and Beth Stooks was chairing our recovery committee. We were having meetings every week. There were representatives from ADACA driving up from Montgomery for a meeting every week. Beth was there, a team of volunteers was there, and we weren't playing around. I mean, we were pretty skilled, and we could get done what you needed done. But if you kept moving what needed done, it was hard to get to a finish line.
For years, we had tried to get several of our structures on the historical list. And we always got turned down. There was always some type of it didn't qualify or whatnot until we wanted to tear them down. Then once we wanted to tear them down, I don't know where they got that many reinforcements, but there was people that we'd never heard of and organizations we'd never heard of that it's got to pass this before you can tear them down. They said, well, you can't tear them down. They got to be fixed. But yet they wouldn't provide the funding to fix them. So do we leave an unsafe structure that's going to fall on somebody? They were trying to tell property owners they couldn't tear down their own property.
If you had to blame one, I'm blaming FEMA. But there's a combination of factors here. So we ended up getting on a conference call, and there were some representatives from FEMA and from the state EMA. And then luckily for us, Senator Reed had jumped on. And I don't remember what task was given to us, but we had completed it. We were like, here it is, here's the results, we're done, where's the check, let's get this thing rolling. And they started telling us other things that needed done on the call. But Senator Reed chimes in, and he very eloquently introduces himself and who he is and the district he represents, and he makes sure to let them know that Cordova is his hometown and it's where he grew up. He hit every point on the head. He literally was talking about them holding our community hostage, and like, you guys don't understand the magnitude of what you're doing to a city's recovery. We can't do anything else. Like, this is it. Within weeks, we have funding. Within weeks. In my 8 years in Cordova, there are plenty of things I didn't do very well, and there are plenty of things I screwed up, and plenty of swings and misses, plenty of things I was just blind to. That wasn't one. That was a hit for me. That was, I understand the magnitude of what this demolition is. And just letting people stand outside the fence and watch the bulldozer hit it felt different to me than, hey, let's open these gates one more time, come through, and whatever that means to you, let's do that together. And then we're gonna knock them down. We go early and we set up. But I remember I was cooking some hot dogs and we were getting ready, and there were a couple people trickling around already, and we had just popped the gate. I literally turned, looked back up the hill towards the Methodist church, which where the Methodist church was, had been, because I think they were constructing it at the time. There's like 100 cars parked. I had not seen any of them come, and all of a sudden they're just there, and there's just this wad of people coming off the hill. And
it was a blessing and a curse. We had all these old buildings that possibly could have been rehabbed and turned into some storefronts and different things like that. And then, there was always that possibility hanging in the balance, but once they're gone and they're destroyed, you look at some bare earth, and it's going to take a lot more to build something there than it is to bring something in an old building. So
a lot of the property wasn't necessarily reclaimed. There's still basements down there. And these companies that come in to tear them down filled up the basements and packed them as good as they could. Because if it's underground, FEMA didn't consider that to be a hazard. Even though you could fall 10 feet, 20 feet into a hole, it wasn't a hazard because it wasn't going to fall on anybody. So if you had to read through the red tape to see exactly what deconstruction could and could not do. So there wasn't anything wrong with them filling up the holes. They just couldn't dig up what was there. So you still have some concrete. It's there because they couldn't dig it up. So there's not necessarily a clean slate left, but they toted away the hazard. It was 2016 before we had a permanent home. And of course the tornado happened in 2011. We never went home. We never truly went back to the station. Our first place, of course, after that was the old pharmacy. So we stayed in it, and FEMA ended up giving us a camper to stay in, and then brought an office, an actual mobile office down here. So we worked out of those two things and kept our trucks downtown forever. So that was our first temporary. Then we ended up at the old VFW for a while. We got permission from the Board of Education to take over the old high school gym. We cut 2 big doors in it and had all of our trucks on the actual basketball court, which was a sight. It's the biggest building we'd ever been in.
Yeah, for sure.
But eventually they had plans to demo it. That didn't go well. We tried to keep it till we could get something built, but they had other plans. The next place we went was back to the VFW. Yep. Now we were on the actual auditorium side. Yeah. So we built a small office up on the old stage that was in there, and just kept the trucks outside again for another year, year and a half. And then we were able to transition from there to here.
I thought we ended up way ahead on the fire department, and when we were looking at that, one of the things we were focused on was we've got a group of 20 to 30 volunteers in Cordova. These people that just show up because they want to. So a big part of their culture is to be together, to have a meeting once a week or twice a month or whatever it is, and be together and eat dinner together, and they do life together, and there's married couples in there and kids and different generations of families. And so one of the things as we started to develop this, the amount of money that we had available to build a fire station, it could get us, a metal building to park trucks in. Yeah, I mean, that's really what we could afford. And talking with Dean and our city leaders, I was like, that's not enough. That doesn't get it for us. And
we looked at several parcels, but every parcel we looked at was going to take so much money to do the site prep that we're going to eat up all of our funds to build. And we got lucky enough that the Love family had a house in town, and it's been here since I think it's 62. Yep. And they grew up here, and it was part of the mill property, and they hated to see it just sold and not used or just set here. So they sold it to the city for a price that we couldn't turn down. All this was done by us except for the windows. The company come in and put our countertops in because it was marble, and the rest of the work we done ourselves. Our group come together and done some pretty spectacular things, in my opinion, because we weren't carpenters, we weren't tile people, we didn't know how to do all this. But YouTube was a wonderful thing. YouTube, somebody was up here almost every day. And if it wasn't 2 of us, there was 10 of us.
Go to work, get off work, you come here, and we'd work 2, 3, 4 in the morning, go home, take a nap, get a shower or whatnot, go back to work, and then we'd see everybody back that afternoon back here.
We just kind of planned it that way.
I was so proud of that project and what the finished product for us was. And then obviously the grocery store we got built with the grant funding that Mayor Scott was able to get. So Jack Scott was still coming to that office when I took office and still working with Leanne and getting paperwork and driving to Montgomery. I can't walk in a door in November and take credit for a grant application that had been in for months. That was Jack's victory. Obviously the city benefited from it, and obviously I ended up changing ideas of design and how we were going to put this store together and where, kind of where on the lot we were going to put it. That was all Jack's.
I think things happen for a reason. Jack was in a position that he's probably one of the hardest working men we got in this city, and it took a hard worker to get us through that first year or two. After the tornadoes, it took somebody that was going to spend the 10 to 12, 14 hours a day down here to make sure that things were going the right way. And then Drew comes in, he's young, vibrant, educated. He puts us on a path of doing things that we had never done before as far as budgets and getting everything in order financially and leaving a solid foundation. And I think it just lined up perfectly for when I came in. The foundation was as solid as you could get it, and then I kind of brought my ideas of picking the infrastructure up, making sure that we are taking care of what the city's responsible for to the max, and using my connections with outsiders to kind of get people interested in doing business here.
In this generation, in this era, where we have an interstate that connects us within a half hour to everything Alabama has to offer in Birmingham, and then the other direction towards Jasper, what are we, 10 to 15 minutes, that has all the restaurants that you could probably want, all the big box retailers you could probably want. What is the development on Main Street? And I don't know the answer to that question. Don't forget that before the tornadoes, we had all those buildings. How many of them were occupied by private businesses? 2 or 3? I think there is the old chicken and the egg scenario. You have to build businesses to get people to come move here, or to make the city flourish again, or do you need to go get the people to live here before the buildings? And I actually changed my opinion on that in my time in office, and I'm very much a believer in we need more population to sustain those businesses to begin with.
For years when I was a kid, it's like we got 2 railroads and a river. We should be able to get an industry here. Well, we got an industrial park 2 minutes up the road. I don't anticipate any industry coming here, but those people got to live somewhere, and we want this to be a community where they can come and live and be 5 minutes from work. Well, we got a lot of things moving and shaking right now. The first is a 47-acre housing development just across the river on Horse Creek Boulevard. We're in the process of getting the maps that it takes to the topographical maps to start building the lots. It's moving slower, of course, than I want it to, but in the end, it'll be a good investment. Possibility to have 150 homes over there. So, we'll break it up into 50 at a time. And so just to have 50 homes here in Cordova built would be more than was built in the last 50 years. Yeah, it's very important for us to remain a small town, and to keep those small town values and to be able to know who your neighbors are and to care for them and love them. But also we got to attract some people in that's that's going to come here and want to make this their home.
One of the most aggravating things that I see with some of our citizens in Cordova is anytime we talk, they say, "Oh, we never can do that. It's never going to be back. We're never." I tell them, I say, "Yeah, but that you like that, you're exactly right." I hope for my total turn up that there'll be $1 million homes along the ridges going between Cordova and Parish.
I got a local guy that's interested in building 4 storefronts downtown. He's working with his architect to kind of get them drawn up, get them drawn up to where he can figure out, present it to the council, whether it's going to be what we want, if we can help them, things like that. It's in the small stages of it, but I feel good about this guy because he's local and because he's looking for a long-term type investment for the city of Cordova.
When we started to switch the mindset to we need more people to live here before we can even think about somebody building businesses, we were like, well, how do you attract the people, And Parks and Recreation was where we were really able to make a dent because we were running parallel to other organizations, specifically the Health Action Partnership of Walker County. You know, they were putting kayak and canoe launches in across the county, and they called, and I'm like, bring it on. You know, how many you want to put? We're in, and we ended up, you know, supporting 2 inside the city limits, and then there's another down at Barney Beach that we were involved in that's not in the city limits, but it was in the police jurisdiction. So we were like, we can justify, you know, being involved here too. So
yeah, this park that Drew has invested in with during his term, and he got it started, and we. Of course, we're here now and we got a lot of green grass growing. It's really, really, really sparked a lot of people's, they've really been interested in what's going on here. You know, they love to see the green grass. They love to see the park coming together. And so I think this is going to be our big draw for Cordova, is that to have this big open area to people to gather, to come out and have a good time.
Probably midway through my first term, we get a master plan developed for the old cotton mill property. I mean, it'd probably take $2.5 million to really like develop that thing the way we wanted to. So we were like, you know, we're gonna have to eat this elephant one bite at a time. And we started kind of picking at it, and we were able to get a grant through the Walker Area Community Foundation in my last year in office there. And so we were able to do all that clearing, get it just cleared out and grass planted and the pond restored. And
well, our older generation, they are definitely excited about this pond. You know, I'm 45 years old. I've never seen water in this pond as far as like to where you could see it. And it was a cooling pond, and it had spray towers on it, and all those little concrete things that you see had a spray tower on them, and the water would come up and spray up, and it would just kind of mist back down and cool the water as they used it for some purpose inside the mill. And so a lot of our older generation, they are very, very excited about, you know, being able to see this pond and be able to see water in it, and it just kind of sparks their interest of when they were a child and the things that they did when they were here. And you know, they've taken a lot of initiation to help us with it, and to, you know, maintain the fish and maintain some things in there. And so it's been really exciting for me to get them involved and to have them to help us out and to be excited about it. And it's not just one or two, it's a bunch of them, you know, that they like to see the pond back to its old glory. We're doing a lot in Cordova, and we're trying to make sure that it's a beautiful place to come visit, making it as easy as for people to do business here, easy for them to, you know, not have any pressure on them other than, you know, come enjoy, you know, what we have to offer, you know, take care of it, and, you know, raise a good family here. The old tales are that, you know, the Indians settled here because it was a safe place, you know, and that tornadoes just didn't come through here. And then all of a sudden you get hit by 2 in the same day. Well, that'll bring you back to reality, and that, you know, tornadoes don't necessarily not come through anywhere. They'll hit anywhere. So we decide that we're gonna make sure we're prepared every time, whether it comes through here or not. I mean, every time we have a tornado warning, you know, I go into planning mode of, if it hits Cordova, what is the first 10 things that I'm going to do?
Even though the day was sad and tragic, and all of us, especially families here that lost loved ones, that day will always be a horrible day to them. We did have some good come out of it. Before that day, we had 0 community shelters in our county. And through that disaster, the funding became available for us to put community shelters throughout our county. We have 20, or we had 0 then, we have 20 now, and they each hold 100 people each. So we were also able to get like 125 individual shelters in people's properties that didn't have them before. Every year on the anniversary, I share a post on my EMA Facebook page. It says, you know, it's a small meme. It says, you know, I try to remind people to remember the victims we lost that day. It's just, they were not just a story. They were somebody's loved one, somebody's child or sister, brother. You know, that is important to me. Like, out of that tragedy, yes, everybody, they experienced loss, but nobody experienced the loss like those families. Like our 9 people here that we lost. I don't want people to just see a cross on the side of the road. I want them to remember that. And I don't want them to become victims the next time. I want them to remember these families, remember these loved ones, pray for them every year, remember their faces, remember their names, remember they were not just a victim, but they had a life and a story. and so does their family.
We hang the flag to remember those that we lost. Not just the people, but the community.
We're sneaking in at night. That way nobody sees it kind of till the next morning when the sun rises. There it is. And it's still, I mean, it sends chills down you every single year that we do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to wake up on April 27th this year, and I'm going to have some feelings, and I'm going to have some emotions, and I'm probably going to do some things myself. For me, it's a very individual affair. It's the passing looks that we give one another that day. We all know. We're not to say anything. We know. We all know what we're feeling. So.
And I think we've come a long way as far as funding and things in the last 10 years for reaching out and being able to get some funding that wasn't even there until these tornadoes hit on April 27th. Well, everything moves about twice as slow as you think it should, and don't get disheartened when a project falls through or when you meet a roadblock that you just got to keep pressing on.
It's getting there in my book. Like, we're slowly creeping out of the hole, digging. It's been a long journey, but like, we're still moving. That's kind of my whole thing is I just want to do something else that make the city progress too, as far as just growing into the future.
And like I said, this is home, and I hope it's home for a lot of kids. I hope these younger kids now can grow up and have memories. They don't have to be mine, and they won't be. They'll be theirs. But I want them to have good memories about Cordova.